A very close moment then for Richard Neary and that number 10 machine of Jordan Witt. They were in an almighty scrap, which also involved Nick Jones in the Team Parker Racing Bentley. They were fighting for positions towards the back of the top 10, but you'd think they were fighting for the win on the last lap. It was the same sort of thing in GT4 as the HHC McLarens ganged up on the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang of Matt Cowley. Whilst at the head of the field, it was Michael O'Brien who led the way until a mistake coming out of Coppice Corner about 2/3 of the way through the first stint. Speaking of mistakes, Adam Ballon went off down at the Melbourne hairpin. That mistake would prove costly later in the race. As we move towards the 1 hour mark, the pit stop window opened, but some chose to stay out longer than others, including the 97 car of the TF Sport car in GT4 and the 78 car. Rob Collard putting in a mammoth stint of about 80 minutes before eventually pitting to hand over to Sandy Mitchell. The 96 car of Ollie Wilkinson had stayed out late as well, but had a spin into the gravel trap. It all boiled down then to a Mercedes versus Lamborghini scrap at the front, and Andrea Calderelli, having taken over the car in 4th place, came through to win the race with a late pass on the 69 Mercedes of Patrick Kuyala. So WPI Motorsport then took their first victory of the season in an absolute thriller at Donington Park, whilst in GT4 it was TF Sport that won, but not the car that led all the way. It was the 95 car of Patrick Kibble and Conor O'Brien who came home to lead it at 1-2 actually in GT4 for TF Sport. So still, the decision has not been made as to what tyres these teams are going to start on. I think, honestly, given the fact that the pit stop window doesn't open until about half an hour into the race, I think the track is going to be dry by that point, and it's not always about fitting the right tyres for the conditions now. You sometimes have to anticipate what they'll be like in 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes time. And as the pit lane has now opened, cars are starting to make their way out onto the circuit. There are some wet tyres ready at Balfe Motorsport, and they have the pole position for this race. It is a welcome return to the championship as a driver for Joe Osborne, my regular co-commentator up here in the box. He'll be back again for a few more rounds later this year. It's a part-season campaign for the Balfe Motorsport squad this year. The team that won the most recent race at Donington Park in September, with Sean Balfe himself and Rob Bell at the wheel. Number 69 will be starting 6th on the grid and will have a success penalty to serve, of course. The top 3 finishers in both GT3 and GT4 from race number 1 will have to serve extra time in the pit lane. There are wet tyres going on to the 18 car, so WPI Motorsport fitting the wet Pirelli tyres. They've made their decision. There was some thought that since the pro drivers are starting the cars in this race, so Andrea Calderelli will take the first stint for the WPI squad, maybe they would go for slicks. I don't think they have the ability to change the tyres on the grid either, so this is the decision that they must stick with. 97 car will start from 4th on the grid in GT4, and it looks as though they're probably on wets as well. So the safe choice appears to be to stick the wet tyres on here, but it's going to be David Addison, another really fascinating race. Now, the reason David's late on parade, so to speak, is I know you've been up and down the pit lane desperately trying to find out what the teams are going to do. It's a really interesting quandary, this. The track is not quite dry, but it's certainly not wet either.
Well, I'm not entirely sure who was helping who, because it was more a case of me asking a team and them asking me what the other teams were doing. So it was quite a lot of laps up and down the pit lane, and you're right. The general consensus is wets, because it's not quite, if you look at the pit straight, if you look at the Melbourne hairpin, it's not yet dry enough. You've got to be a real gambler to go slicks. And as far as I can work out, there is only one definite gambler just going down the pit lane now, Team Parker Racing. Now, the Bentley isn't the best car in the wet, so they are of the opinion that we can either put wets on it in the wet and it not be good, or we can gamble on slicks and it not be good, or we can gamble on slicks and look like heroes. There's less to lose there, possibly. So it might be that they have changed their minds, but the intention, I thought, was that this would be on slicks, and we will see if it is the right place to be. Now, it's hard to gauge off the tyres as you see the car. It's a bit twitchy to suggest that might be on slicks. I think I overheard you just saying as I came back to the booth that you can't change on the grid. You're right. And it might be, depending on what people have gone out on, that you end up with this rush of pit stops at the end of the formation lap, or indeed at the end of your installation lap. Now, I just mulled this over with Matt Griffin. And we decided that, well, you could go out on slicks, realise it's the wrong choice, come into the pits, start from the pit lane, and you're then behind any incident that goes on at the first corner on a greasy road anyway. But then I saw them wheeling out wets for the Ferrari, so he's not being quite as cautious in that respect. But again, he's saying, you know, we're not great in the wet either in the Ferrari. So, yeah, I think the safe money is on wets. The gamblers will go slicks, and we'll find out. I went into the Barwell garage. There was a brains trust of 5 people, which included Mark Lemmer, engineers, the drivers, and when I left, the answer was, who's got a coin? I mean, it's almost like that now, because it is not obvious. And just as I left the pit lane, I felt 2 spots of rain fall on my neck. So, you know, it might be that it's all bets off anyway, and you've got no option. But I have to say, looking out of our window, I can see more of Donington than I have all day, so I reckon it's brightening if nothing else.
And the track is drier now, I would say, than it's been at any stage today, so it may not be quite ready for slicks, but if it doesn't rain, it probably will be halfway through this first stint. It's really, really interesting, this. Of course, we've got a different look to the grid this time as well, because it was a separate qualifying session that set the grid for race number 2. As I was saying earlier on, Balf Motorsport, on their return to the GT3 ranks, are on pole position. Remember, they won in GT4 at Alta Park last time with Mia Fluid and Ewan Hankey in race number 2. Joe Osborne will start that car, and he'll have Scott Mulvin alongside. So the Bentley that's pulling into position now, if they are on slick tyres, and my eyesight is not good enough to tell from here, when it stops I might have a fighting chance. Let's have a look at that back tyre. Is that a slick racing tyre? I think it might be.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
yes, it is, definitely.
They've gone the gamble. Okay.
So, and of course they're starting on the front row of the grid, so if they've got no grip on the opening lap or so, which they may not have, because it's obviously the tyres are slicked and they're also going to be cold on the first lap too, relatively speaking, but that's a potentially slow and low on grip car at the front of the pack, and it's a real risk to take this, because this is by far the best performance we've seen from this team this year. Qualified second and only narrowly missing out on pole position by, I think, 69 1/1000ths of a second. So Team Park Racing and Scott Mulvin, they showed good pace in qualifying yesterday. They really mustn't fancy their pace in the wet if they're willing to take a risk from that grid position.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the Bentley is historically not a great car in the wet. Of course, the other factor in all of this is that it's a Pro-Am entry, so Nick Jones, who would do the second stint, arguably might get the better of the conditions. So if you are going to risk anything, Scott Mulvin as the gun, you let him brave it out. We'll soon know whether that car holds its place or whether it drops like a stone, won't we? As far as GT4 is concerned, team managers I've spoken to have said, no, you've got to go wets. It's no. Others are saying it's very close to being that tipping point, and of course the race isn't due to start for a few minutes yet. So, yeah. Bob Neville, who runs the McLaren, ended up asking me. Now, you know you're in a bad place when you have to ask the media. And the question was slicks or wets. And I think he's absolutely right. Slicks or wets, that would be the choice.
One or the other.
One or the other, Bob. You can't go wrong. Yeah.
Well, the Balf Motorsport car of Joe Osborne then seemed to be very squirrely on its way out of the Melbourne hairpin. Now, they are very late to the grid. They're about the last car. And in fact, a few, I wonder, are too late to the grid. Look at this. We've still got cars queuing up in the pit lane. Now, I think they've missed the window to get out of the pits, and they are they wanted to, either they wanted to or they ended up staying there longer than they should have done, and they're going to have to sacrifice their grid positions, but they could make a later decision on what tyres to start on.
Yeah, Matt Griffin is in the pits, so remember what I said to him about starting behind everybody. Right, let's have a look at some of the cars. 66 is on slicks, 78 is on wets, 72 is on slicks, so Phil Keane on slicks, that's going to be interesting. Number 6 is on wets, 69 is on wets, 36 on pole position, slicks, so it's an all-slick front row. And Nick Jones' car on the front of the grid is a slick shod car. Scott Mulvin will start it, but Nick is with Kelvin.
Nick, so you've gone for the slicks. I think most of the grid is here on the wets. You guys obviously feel that you're going to get a slight advantage starting with the slicks.
Yeah, I don't think it's a we decision, it's a Scott decision. So he's driving the car first, thankfully, so he's right to make that call. So it's a risk, but you know, we've struggled a little bit for a bit of pace in the wet, so we're going to try and roll the dice. A few have followed what we've done, and just see what happens. So give it a whirl.
I think personally you made the right call. Just being on the track now, it's starting to really kind of dry out, and I think in the next 10 or 15 minutes it'll be it'll be pretty almost there. So I think it's the right call. Like myself, you stepped up to GT3 this year from GT4.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, what are the biggest changes and the biggest challenges that you've faced so far?
It's just so much faster. So you know, you've got the aero. There's a lot to get used to. It's not just straightforward jumping to something else. You know, there's a lot more going on. You've got a bigger window to adjust the car. which is actually of no use to me whatsoever. I just have to get in and drive whatever they give me, to be fair. So, you know, like, I'm enjoying GT3. It is a big step up, and probably bigger a step up than I thought it was going to be. But hey, we're out there and having a lot of fun. So
and you're on the front row, so you're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, Scott did this. Yeah, I just got us here.
You're too modest. Well, good luck for the race.
Yeah,
anyway.
cheers. Thanks, guys.
Back to you guys.
Thanks, Calvin. So good to hear from Nick Jones. I should think a fairly nervous Nick Jones. We have, courtesy of the SRO media team, got pretty much everybody on the grid in their tyre choice. So Joe Osborne on pole, slicks. Scott Malvern alongside slicks. Second row, Phil Keane is on slicks. And the fourth row, Andrea Calderelli is on slicks. Now, those that are still in the pit lane, 57 McLaren, which is going to be the car of Gus Bowers, that I'm imagining will come out on slicks. Number 9 is still there as well, which is the Angus Fender McLaren. That I think he's going to be on slicks. Dean McDonald to start it. 51 Matt Griffin. They were looking at wets, but probably slicks now. And 21 also, did I see the Mia Fluid Ewan Hankey McLaren. So the guess would be, the theory would be, they will all appear on slick tyres.
Yes, so all of the predictions I was making to myself pre-race about who the front runners were going to be in this one have pretty much gone out the window now, because we've got this mix of tyres, top 2 cars on slicks, but then Barwell, the 78 car, surprised in a way actually that they've gone wets when the teammates have gone slick, but 78 third on the grid, the highest placed Silver Cup entrant as well, who would like to get themselves a podium, I would imagine. I was thinking they might be a good shot for the win this time. They have no success penalty, but they're on a different tyre strategy to the rest.
Let's just go back to the grid. Let's join Kelvin Fletcher again.
Hey guys, so we've got the new car for this year for GT4, the Toyota Supra, piloted by James Kell and Sam Smelt, 2 very handy drivers. What's really impressed me about this new car, obviously it's with Speedworks, a very competent, very experienced team, but this is a brand new car, and I think straight out the blocks it's been fast and certainly one to watch. I think today it's going to continue its form, and for me, I think it's one of the best looking GT4 cars too.
I wouldn't disagree with that, Kelvin. It's good to have something different, isn't it? And the Supra cars of this type run in the European Series. Now we've got them in Britain as well. And a first podium earlier on today, and it was a good result.
Yes, and a long time coming, which seems like a strange thing to say after just 3 races. But as I said, at Alton Park, in both races, they were in contention for a podium. And on both occasions, something went wrong. A penalty in race 1, damage from contact in race 2. And so, yeah, they've got the podium. And now they start on the front row in GT4. It's the 58 HHC McLaren, started by Jordan Collard, that's on pole. Speedworks Toyota second, and the 95 car that took over the GT4 championship lead by the grand total of 2.5 points after race 1 over the sister car. A little out of position, 6th on the grid for them, and they've got a 10-second success penalty. So GT4 is going to get jumbled up once more by those success penalties, and the grid is a little different as well.
Just to make a point about the success penalties, they are, if you were watching the earlier 2-hour race, the times gained here are less because it's a shorter race. So rather than 20 seconds for a winning car, it's only 10 seconds. So Andy was making the point in the first race as the cars blast away on the formation lap about how it's hard to overcome it in the shorter 1-hour race. It's absolutely true, but at least you start with less time lost in the pit. So in a sense it counters out, but you know, all you need is for people ahead to have a drama or a safety car, and no matter what the pit stop situation was, you're back in the game. So let's just see first of all whether those cars are going to be released now or at the end of the first racing lap. Looks as though they are going to have to wait until the end of the first racing lap. Some championships will allow you out, like the BTCC for example, to join the back of the grid on the formation lap. AF Corsa and Balve with the GT4 McLaren leaving this as late can be, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. They haven't got any tyres fitted to those cars yet. They're still up on jacks, and of course the difficulty here is they won't have any time to get temperature into those slick tyres. Here's the grid then. Joe Osborne for Balve Motorsport on pole position, with Team Parker Racing Scott Malvern alongside. Sandy Mitchell and Phil Keane making an all Barwell Lamborghini second row of the grid, and then on the third row of the grid, Yelmer Berman for Ram Racing and Patrick Kuyala, again keeping the Noah's Ark formation. A pair of Ram Racing Mercedes share the third row. Row 4 for Jack Mitchell in the 2Cs Motorsport McLaren, and Andrea Calderelli, the race 1 winners, having to come from 8th this time around. 5th row of the grid, rounding out the top 10. James Baldwin, the championship leader after Alton Park, has Matt Griffin in the AF Corsa Ferrari, or would have alongside him, but of course that car's still on its jacks in the pit lane. This is how the grid should have lined up, essentially, before people decided to leave it very, very late. Sam De Haar and Dean McDonald make up the 6th row of the grid, and then the last of the GT3 runners down on row number 7 will be Ollie Wilkinson for Optimum Motorsport. Jordan Collard has the GT4 pole for HHC Motorsport and will be looking to try and take some points out of TF Sport in this race. Sam Smelt's Toyota and Daniel Vaughan's TF Sport, Aston Martin 3rd. That is the car 2nd in the championship right now. The 4th place on the GT4 grid for Academy Motorsports Mustang. Ewan Hankey's Balf Motorsport McLaren would be next, but is in the pit lane. There you can see it at the back of the queue on the screen, along with the 57 HHC McLaren 2. And so the GT4 ranks are rather thinner than they should be, because 2 cars are lining up in the pit lane. Conor O'Brien, the championship leader, down in 19th. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook for Century Motorsport will make up the back row of the grid, essentially, as we get ready to go racing then for the 4th time in the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. The 2nd race of the day here from the spectacular Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. Remember, the top 2 cars on the grid, Joe Osborne and Scott Mulvin, are on slick tyres. The first of the wet shod cars is Sandy Mitchell from 3rd, who is still there on the 3rd on the grid, the black Lamborghini. Here we go then, into the unknown we venture once more. Away they go. Joe Osborne is slow away. Sandy Mitchell tries to get on the inside and cannot do it. Neck and neck between the 2 slick shot cars into Redgate Corner. The drier line is on the outside, and that is exactly the line that Scott Mulvin will try to use to get the lead away. Through Redgate they go. He's done it. The Bentley's through, and there's almost contact there. Around the outside went Phil Keane, side by side with Joe Osborne. There's 3-1. It's not Phil Keane. It is Jelmer Berman in the Ram Racing Mercedes. Osborne going backwards here. What a jumbled order. We have already the 2Cs car charging through. Jack Mitchell there. We don't know the other one, is it? 9, that is, coming through towards the front of the field. Down into the old hairpin they go. Well, the Bentley holds on to the race lead. Joe Osborne rather muscled out of it there through Redgate Corner. All things considered, David, quite lucky to get through that without significant contact.
Interesting that the McLaren on slicks has dropped back. The Bentley on slicks got the advantage. So Joe Osborne seems to be struggling for traction in a way that the Bentley wasn't. And it is number 10, McLaren, in 2nd place, Jack Mitchell. So he's up from 7th on the grid into 2nd place, because number 9 is a pit starter. But look at the way that Scott Mulvin is getting away already. So you've got them, a car on slicks ahead of a car on wet. McLaren is a wet shod car. Now there is Joe Osborne, 36, losing out as they drop down towards the S's. Against him is Sandy Mitchell. So the Lamborghini on the wet tyres goes through, but right now Scott Mulvin doing a brilliant job on slicks on the opening lap of the race.
Yes, I wonder whether maybe Jack Mitchell in seconds on wet, because he had a lot of confidence on the wet side of the road through the Craner curves to charge through from 7th on the grid into 2nd spot halfway around the 1st lap. Here we come then, 1 lap about to be in the books, and you can see that 2Cs Motorsport McLaren is closing in on Scott Mulvin, the race leader for Team Parker Racing. The order at the end of lap 1 bears very little resemblance to the way in which they started the race a lap ago. Across the line they go. Bentley leads once more in the British GT Championship.
So the McLaren and the Mercedes on wets, as we know, and they brought the gap down sufficiently to prove that even though slicks might be good, they're not as good as the wets right now. So the gamble has been chosen by Team Parker Racing on Scott Mulvin, but it's not paying off just yet, because the McLaren goes through. So that is Jack Mitchell, 7th to 1st in a lap and a couple of corners, and now Jelmer Berman lines up to have a dive and will go through. The road is drying, you can see that, but it's not yet drying quickly enough. It's not very windy out there, it's not that warm out there. It's taking a long time for the track to dry.
Yes, but I think it'll get there. This is short-term pain for long-term gain, I think, for those on slick. Scott Mulvin already at this part of the circuit looks as though he's got the pace to come back at Jelmer Berman. Sandy Mitchell there in the leading the 2nd place Silver Cup car, the 78 Barwell Lamborghini, 5th place in race 1, 4th place at the moment on wet tyres as well. Here you can see Mulvin looks now quicker. He's attacking Jelmer Berman again down the back straight, just like that. Within half a lap, it started to flick back the other way. The Bentley on the outside line, but on the wet tyres, on the wet side of the road, Berman had more confidence under braking and fends him off.
But look behind, you see you've got Sandy Mitchell on wets, and he is closing on the Bentley as well. Then you've got Joe Osborne, 5th on slicks, and he's not with them. He's struggling relative to those ahead, and then there's another dive being made as well further back. Is there not Sam De Haar getting up alongside James Baldwin? Yes, the Mercedes goes through. Here comes Sandy Mitchell up to have a go against the Formula 4 champion Scott Mulvin as they break now for Goddard. Sandy to the outside line of tire pressures that did fall them in the earlier race, and out wide runs the Bentley. Mitchell tries to get up alongside as over the timing line Jack Mitchell leads Jelmer Berman, and the gap is 1 second between the two of them at the end of lap 2.
Side by side for 3rd behind them, Sandy Mitchell to the outside of Scott Mulvin. Here the Lamborghini on the wetter side of the road should have the traction off the corner. Certain parts of the circuit are drying quicker than others, and the parts that are wet, the Bentley is struggling. Joe Osborne right behind him now, so 4th and 5th are the top 2 cars on slick tyres, and then right behind them, the number 8 car, Team ABBA Racing's Sam Neary, also on wet. In GT4, Toyota lead the way. Sam Smelt with a great start here, ahead of the pole sitter Jordan Collard in the 58 car, and then two TF Sport Aston Martins. It's O'Brien ahead of Vaughan, 95 ahead of 97. 97 started ahead on the grid.
And those Astons have got longer pit stops than the McLaren. The Toyota has got 5 seconds extra in the pits. Now, the fastest lap of the race, Jack Mitchell, 1:37.4. Then Scott Mulvern has done a 1:39.7. So there's over 2 seconds between the best lap time if you're on wets and if you're on slicks. And here comes Sandy Mitchell up the inside, and that is going to give him a place back, in fact, because he had just dropped back behind relative to how they crossed the line, but he's got the job done now. So slick tyres not working as well as wets. That's the evidence.
Yes, but I think through the old hairpin and up through McLean's and Coppice, they are working better every lap. That's where the Bentley of Mulvern and the white McLaren there of Joe Osborne close in on Sandy Mitchell. Through this part of the circuit, though, it's a bit damper, and he scoots back away again. No one, though, really is escaping at the front here, are they? Jack Mitchell leads the way by a second at the line over Jelmer Berman. I think Jelmer's caught him on this lap. And here, one of the cars that was contesting the race win, 69, the Ram Racing Mercedes, second place in race number 1. They've dropped down the order here slightly. James Baldwin right behind them trying to come through. That is the scrap for 7th place.
Fastest middle sector of anybody, backing up your point, Scott Mulvern. So he's done the absolute best in that run from the approach to the old hairpin all the way around to the approach to the S's. As you look at the GT4 fight, 97 there, getting up on the inside line. Dan Vaughan going ahead of Conor O'Brien, so a switch for third in GT4, behind Jordan Collard, who is second, and behind Sam Smelt, former British Touring Car Championship racer, who leads in the Speedworks Toyota at the moment. Back on the inside line, though, there, Dan Vaughan fending off to keep the place. Conor O'Brien, his teammate, and Jordan Albert, the impressive young British driver, next up in the mighty Mustang.
And Dean McDonald catching them in the GT3 2Cs McLaren. Scott Mulvern back into 3rd place now at the part of the circuit where the slick tyres are working. He's got Sandy Mitchell, who's sliding. He's got no rear grip under acceleration, and through goes Joe Osborne as well. So Joe Osborne follows him through, takes advantage of the slides from the Lamborghini. 2 places lost for Sandy Mitchell, and off the road, just as I was saying nice things about him, goes Dean McDonald spinning away. Well, it wasn't a strong position that he was in, but he was coming through on those slick tyres, which will have no purchase on that wet grass.
No, he's going to struggle to get off there, which might be a drama for those in race control, so we need to keep an eye to that. Jack Mitchell, though, getting away from Jelmer Berman as Dean McDonald struggles and struggles and struggles to get the car off the grass. Wherever he is, he's somewhere through the Craner curves, I guess. Now there, look to the outside line, Sam Neary having a go at Sandy Mitchell, who is falling away, despite the fact that that's a car on wets. Where in all of this is Phil Keane, because he's on slicks and he's down in 9th, and Andrea Calderelli's Lamborghini on slicks is down in 10th. The Bentley, actually, of those on the slicks, is working better than any other brand.
Yeah, Phil Keane struggling, although he's just got past James Baldwin. Slicks ahead of wets now then for 8th place overall. But yeah, Scott Mulvern and Joe Osborne, in fairness, after he got roughed up at the start, did Joe, but he's now well and truly going with Scott Mulvern. There is Phil Keane, stuck right underneath the rear wing, or he was at least, of the 69 car.
There's number 9 McLaren stranded at the foot of the Craner curves. I don't think that's going anywhere. Andrea Calderelli is a rather distant 10th now. As far as I can work out, Andrea Calderelli, the first Italian to win around a British GT. I'll stand corrected if anybody knows better, but I can't think of another Italian that's had a BGT win. As here now, Bentley on the attack. Up the inside goes Scott Mulvern to go into 2nd at the expense of Jelmer Berman, and Joe Osborne dives bombs the Mercedes and goes 3rd. So at this sector where the slicks do work, Bentley and McLaren not only go ahead of the Mercedes, but absolutely storm through. Look at the gap they pull.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have to change the slick tyres at the stops, aren't they? The ones that are stuck on the wets right now. And I don't think it'll be long before these 2 cars are contesting the race lead, because they are clearly quicker than those around them. Back to GT4 now. 58 is running in 2nd place, Jordan Collard. 3rd place right behind him, Dan Vaughan. All of the GT4 cars, as far as we are aware, started on wet tyres, except for maybe those that came from the pit lane. So this is an equal battle out there. They're all on the same tyres, and the 58 car falling away at the moment from the Toyota. It doesn't look as quick as the cars all around it.
No, Ewan Hankey was a pit lane starter, and he's lapping in the 42s, much quicker than anybody else in GT4, suggesting it might be slicked, whereas the other car from the pit lane of Gus Bowers is slower, but still improving his lap time. Joe Osborne has done the fastest lap of the race, as you look at 58 going through there. That is the HHC Jordan Collard entry, but he's under attack, isn't he? Because Dan Vaughan comes up to have a go at him. This is the second and third in GT4. Dan Vaughan on the outside line, Jordan Collard on the inside. And he hangs onto the place. A bit of end plate from the Aston flicked off there, so that might affect the aero in a relative way to the GT4 car, but Collard is the cork in the bottle now. And look at Ewan Hankey behind them. He's up into 5th place in class.
As Scott Mulvern goes to the race lead, he's got himself ahead of the number 10 car of Jack Mitchell. Joe Osborne follows him through as well. You could see that coming. The top three were covered by just 7 tenths at the start of the lap, and as they got to the drier part of the circuit, there was little that Jack Mitchell could do. So Bentley lead once more. They led, then they fell back to about 4th, and now they're back to 1st again, and we're not even 10 minutes into the race yet. Mulvern from Osborne from Mitchell, your top three. And in GT4, the point you were making there, absolutely correct. That Ewan Hankey, there he is, look, the race 2 winners from Alton Park, Ewan Hankey and Mere Fluid. As off the road goes the number 9 car again. So it's got going again after a spin at the old hairpin. And as has rather been the trend for that team today, they've had another spin only about half a lap later.
Yeah, that was the car that was late into race 1 after its fire at the warm-up, so it missed most of that race, and it's missed a chunk of this by being on the grass. Ewan Hankey round the outside, he's got the grip, so the fastest lap of the race done by a car on slick tyres. Fastest lap in GT4 done by a car that we believe is on slicks from a pit lane start. Whatever AF Corsa put on the 51 Ferrari, though, is not working, because Matt Griffin is down in 19th place now, which is virtually last of those that have not had a drama. In other words, there's only a GT4 car and the McLaren that was off the road behind him. Down towards the S's dives Ewan Hankey, experienced driver, but if he's on the right tyre choice now, which we believe to be slicks, you can see why. He's just got so much more grip than the HHC car, which again in the hands there, look, of Jordan Collard, is determined not to let anybody by.
Yeah, that is Dan Vaughan into the back of him as they came out of the chicane. Not intentional, he just carried so much more speed. Yeah, they're getting close and personal, these two, aren't they? They're definitely not keeping 2 metres apart. Inches between them as they head out of the Melbourne hairpin, and the McLaren hanging on to, well, what is now 3rd place in class. It is Sam Smelt, though, I remind you, that still leads in GT4 by 3.3 seconds at the start of the lap over Jordan Collard. I reckon it's a similar margin now over Ewan Hankey.
A drive-through penalty for number 96, Ollie Wilkinson. It's a pit lane infringement, I understand, for having 2 people across the pit lane line. Sorry, it's too many people on the grid at the start, forgive me. So a start line infringement, too many people on the grid, and so 96 gets a drive-through penalty. That's Ollie Wilkinson, who was in 11th place. Now this is number 10, Jack Mitchell, who did lead, and he's under attack from Yelmer Berman, and now from Phil Keane. So Keane on the slicks, getting better and better and better as this stint wears on. Yeah,
it took him a bit longer than others to get these slicks into the sweet spot, didn't it? But now he's there. Well, is he going to get past the Ram Racing Mercedes? It's not going to be made easy for him by Yelmer Berman. 2 hugely experienced pro drivers, though, going wheel to wheel there as they fight for 4th position out of the Goddard's hairpin. You can see how far ahead the leaders are. Joe Osborne closing on Scott Mulvern that time. And then here we have Keane on the inside of Berman again. This is the fight for 3rd place. Jack Mitchell in the blue McLaren, Phil Keane in the green Lamborghini has no traction on the wet side of the road coming out of Redgate Corner, but now he's up to speed on the dry line through the grain of curves. He might be able to fight back. No, he can't. Yelmer Berman refusing stubbornly to let him go through here. Phil Keane having to really work hard. And the trouble is, if you're on the slick tyres, yes, you're quicker, but to overtake, you have to go off that dry line, and that is perilous in the extreme.
Especially if you're on slicks. But there is 58 versus 51, GT4 versus GT3. Matt Griffin trying to work his way up the order. He's being roughed up by Jordan Collard, and that now means that the Aston, Dan Vaughan, tries to find a way past his class rival. Matt Griffin's Ferrari is waking up. I said it was a long way back a little while ago. It's now getting on with the job as Vaughan dive bombs Collard and goes through. So that puts the Aston Martin now up into 2nd in GT4, that is being led by Sam Smelt. And suddenly Matt Griffin's car, it's come to life, hasn't it?
Yeah, finally. So again, we have to assume slick tyres there. Dan Vaughan still hasn't got this move made on Jordan Collard. I was about to say that was a lovely move into the Goddard's hairpin. So they know it's not mandatory to trade paint every time you trade the position. They've been tapping and tapping on each other constantly for the last few laps. Phil Keane knocking on the door here of 3rd place, though. He's up alongside Jack Mitchell now, heading into the Goddard's hairpin. So he's dispatched of Yelmer Berman, and now he gets himself onto the podium, gets very, very out of shape into the Goddard's hairpin on the wet part of the track again, slips out wide, but finds the traction on the exit. So Mulvern leads the way by a second over Joe Osborne, who continues to set better fastest lap. So 1:32.7 now, the new fastest lap of the race for the man in second. Phil Keane goes third, so the top 3 cars now all on slicks.
Phil Keane's last lap was 5 seconds slower than the top 2 because he was busy battling. Now he's got clear real estate ahead of him. Let's see what he can do to hack away at 13 seconds. The earlier incident between Dan Vaughan and Jordan Collard is under investigation. They're not done yet in their little battle. As you see now, Sam Neary getting himself up the order. So he has gone ahead of Jelmer Berman. Now, I thought we were told that Sam Neary had started on wet, but that's giving the suggestion that they did a switch to slicks, but they kind of done it on the grid. So either way, Sam Neary is doing a very, very good job, isn't he? He's getting himself up the order.
Yeah, his personal best is a 37.0 though, which is on a par with those on wet. So I think he's just benefited from all falling over each other in front of him. Jordan Collard's back into third place in GT4 now, and what's more, he's brought with him the 95 Aston Martin of Conor O'Brien, so it's all changed again. It is still, no, it's Ewan Hankey that leads GT4 now. He's got himself ahead of Sam Smelt, who has not yet come across the line. Now he comes through in second. Third place will be Jordan Collard again. Fourth this time will be Conor O'Brien, and down to fifth for Vaughan. So he went from fourth to third to fifth, and now sixth because Gus Bowers comes round the outside, and Gus Bowers, remember, started from the pit lane, possibly on slick tyres.
I mentioned a penalty for Ollie Wilkinson for too many people on the grid. That has been rescinded and will be looked at length after the race. So that drive-through penalty that we mentioned has gone away for the moment, and it will be reviewed post-race. That car, which is on slick tyres as well, don't forget, the number 96 McLaren is in 10th place. Now here is Jack Mitchell. He's down in 4th now with Sam Neary on the attack. And sideways to boot as he goes into Redgate. He gets away with that. He's ahead of Jelmer Berman. Andrea Calderelli is next up. Calderelli is lapping quicker on his slick tyres, but nothing like the pace that others are. And look at the way that Scott Malvern on his slicks booms past the traffic now, with Joe Osborne being boxed in behind him.
Yeah, by another McLaren, the GT4 HHC example, but Malvern's not getting treated that well by the Aston Martin either. Oh, Joe Osborne was going for a gap that was always going to close there. Thankfully, he saw that coming and moved out of the way. Gus Bowers there in number 58 has got past... Oh, no, Jordan Collard's still 58, isn't it, at the head of the queue. So Bowers not making the progress I thought he would, although he might now get his teammate on the exit of the chicane. So Malvern hangs on to the lead then. Joe Osborne was almost within striking range before that little exchange, but in traffic he's dropped back again.
So here's the HHC battle, and it is now full position as Gus Bowers on slicks tries the outside line, and he's all sideways. Meantime, this is the lead battle outright in GT3. Scott Malvern ahead of Joe Osborne. It's a pro-am battle as well, as 57 Gus Bowers gets up the inside of Jordan Collard. So the HHC team switches order. Gus Bowers from the pit lane goes through. There's the Toyota that did lead GT4 earlier. Sam Smelt being lapped by Scott Malvern. Right, we've done 10 laps. And a lot has happened, that is for sure. 7/10 of a second between the Bentley and the McLaren.
Yes, and Joe Osborne looks quicker, I reckon, here. He closed right back in again through that final sector. Sam Smelt slithers his way down through Hollywood. Smelt was only overtaken by Ewan Hankey for the class lead about 2 laps ago, maybe 3. He's already 14 seconds back. That is the advantage of the slick tyres. Joe Osborne then on his welcome return to the championship as a driver, now in contention to try and take the race lead. This is the fight going on for 4th place, and Sam Neary, who's been something of a revelation this year, is about to become, we think, the lead car on wet tyres. He goes on the inside of Jack Mitchell, superior traction off the corner, and now the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes is into 4th place.
What I can't quite work out is why he can do it on wet and Jelmer Berman can't. But we were told from the grid it was wet. Now look at Calderelli. That car now is back at the races. He's a long way adrift of the leaders, 28 seconds, but the Italian on the back of the Dutchman, on the back of the Brit here. So Calderelli on slicks. Let's just see how long it takes him to pick off Jelmer Berman. Not long at all. Through he goes, up the inside. So Andrea Calderelli, with the track conditions improving all the time and coming to the Lamborghini, he also now is a man on a mission. The next interesting factor in all of this is to look at the cars that are currently on slicks and the second stint driver in them.
Yes, exactly, because then the dynamic changes again. I mean, we know that Nick Jones has struggled to pace a bit in the Bentley, so too Proctor in the 36 McLaren, so...
Michael Igo.
Michael Igo very rapid, and Adam Ballon pretty quick as well in the 72 Lamborghini. It's all going to change again later on. Second place changes hands in GT4. Gus Bowers has got himself ahead of Sam Smelt. Once you're released into clean air on these slick tyres, you can take handfuls of seconds out of those on wet. It's just hard to actually make your way through the pack when you catch them, but that looked like it was a fairly easy pass. So HHC now making a McLaren 1-2 in GT4, albeit cars run out of 2 different stables.
indeed so. The HHC, Harrogate Horseless Carriages, to give it its full title, the Kemp family trees business of years past. There on the inside line is Gus Bowers going ahead of Sam Smelt, who give him plenty of racing room. That's the replay of how we got that switch for second place within GT4. So the HHC McLaren ahead of the Speedworks Toyota. Right, so Andrea Calderelli has caught past, pulled away from and said goodbye to Yelmer Berman. He's also got past Jack Mitchell. He's now got boxed in behind the BMW of Andrew Gordon-Colebrook, who gets a little wide on the curb. But the charging ABBA Racing Mercedes, Sam Neary, whether he's on slicks or wets actually doesn't matter in the sense he's the revelation of this stint.
Absolutely, and really impressing everyone this season. I don't think many people had heard of Sam Neary. Obviously his father Richard well known in the British GT Championship, but Sam in his first season racing at anything like this level is certainly not embarrassing himself out there against much more experienced opposition. GT4 leader being lapped by the GT3 leaders there, so Team Park Racing's Scott Marvin still leading the way, but Joe Osborne in second sets another fastest lap, a 1:32.0. To put that into perspective though, we're still about 5.5 seconds off the pole position time in full dry conditions, so the track has some evolving to do yet. 97 and 95 still fighting away here for position. HHC cars fighting in GT4, and now the TF Sport Aston Martins at play. But Joe Osborne here keeping with Scott Mulvern, dropping back though actually through the old head, and I think he may have caught the sister car, of course. The GT4 leading McLaren also run out of Bolt Motorsport in an awkward place maybe there, and just loses a few car lengths.
Andrea Calderelli's up past Sam Neary. As you look at Scott Mulvern then, race leader Joe Osborne did the fastest lap last time. There is the Mercedes of Yelmer Berman under attack from the slick shod McLaren look of Ollie Wilkinson around the outside line. So the Optimum Motorsport McLaren gains a place. That puts him now up into, what, 7th position. So slick's the way to go. A 1:32.0, best lap of the race set by a car on slick tyres in GT3. And look now, Jack Mitchell, who did lead early on, is about to be monstered by Ollie Wilkinson. They come up to put a lap on Jordan Alberts in the Ford Mustang. That's another car on wet tyres as they go through.
Yeah, Optimum had their worst finish of the year in race 1, 9th place finish after that spin up at Cobbles for Wilkinson, but he's making up for it now as he picks his way possibly into 6th place by the end of this lap. He's 7th at the moment, and Yelmer Berman coming through as well behind him. Calderelli's lap times, by the way, still nothing like those of the top three. The top three are in the 31s, 34s. He's in the 37s.
But he has had a lot of traffic to contend with over the last few laps, so we've not really seen a clear lap. Jack Mitchell back ahead there of Ollie Wilkinson as they go through. So Mulvern is the fastest man in the race now. He's done the fastest lap. He leads Osborne by 1.3 seconds. Phil Keane is 3rd, but he's actually dropping back. He's not lapping any quicker than the top 2. In 4th place, Andrea Calderelli, also with a lot of work to do. Sam Neary 5th in the ABBA Racing Mercedes. There it is, that car team managed by Stuart Donohoe, lecturer at the National Centre for Motorsport Engineering at the University of Bolton. Behind Neary is Jack Mitchell, well it was, but he's now Ollie Wilkinson, number 96, ahead of Jack Mitchell, ahead of Yelmer Berman. So every time you find a battle, it's going to change, and it's all to do with tyres. Now, we are about 3.5 minutes away from the pit window opening, so any pain that you're suffering on wets, you can get rid of within the next 3 laps.
Wouldn't it be awful if they changed on to slicks and then it started raining again, because it's getting gloomier again. I can see less of the old hairpin off in the distance out of our commentary box.
What mean you are?
Yes, indeed. It's, well, I mean, look, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I've seen this kind of thing happen before. And, you know, we think, just when we think we've got a handle of how the race is going to play out, the way today has gone so far, it wouldn't be a small surprise if it all changed around again. Joe Osborne then in 2nd place, comes out of the final corner. Seems almost content now, doesn't he, to sort of follow Scott Mulvern. I think he's thrown everything at him. Scott now has the fastest lap, 1:31.0, that he set a lap earlier, and Joe Osborne in 2nd place under no threat for that 2nd place from Phil Keane. Might be content to hang on to 2nd till the stops.
Yeah, I mean, then you start to look at lap times of your co-driver. I would suggest Nick Jones, as the GT3 pit window is now open. It might be that Nick Jones is quicker than Stuart Proctor in the 2nd stint anyway, so he knows that it's going to be a struggle to get past, and what good would it do him? Pit window is open, so if you're on wets, do you bail nice and early? I think the pit lane is going to be like a multi-million euro car park very shortly, as everybody comes in, not only to do the driver change in GT3, which will stop early, again, separate windows to try and stagger the amount of traffic and people in the pit lane. But if you're on wet tyres... Now look, Matt Griffin starting from the pit lane, he's about to go a lap down. Whatever they put on that Ferrari, even though we thought it was waking up, it's never come alive in the way that the Bentley did.
No, they're struggling, aren't they? And as I say, we don't know if they're on slicks or wets, but they've just not had the pace all weekend, arguably. Into the pit lane, plenty of GT3 cars, as you suspected, are heading in to get rid of those wet tyres.
Mitchell is in, Berman is in, and there'll be more. So, yeah. No, slicks are there. Slicks is the way to go. So if you were on slicks, you did it right.
But it was a risk, wasn't it? Because if it was still too damp at the start, it's so easy just to bang wheels with someone, break your suspension, and you're out of the race. So maybe it was better just to play it cautiously. It really was right on that tipping point for the change of conditions.
Leaders have just gone over the timing line, separated by 0.3 of a second. That is Ollie Wilkinson getting himself ahead of Sam Neary. So another place gained by a car on slick tyres. But we might yet get a lead change before the pit stops, do we? Will we? No, it's opened up again, going through the crane and curve. The Bentley loves this section. Yeah,
it's got a slightly longer wheelbase, hasn't it? And it's just a little bit more stable through the high-speed stuff. The McLaren has the edge through the tighter stuff. Both Ram Racing cars are in for their pit stops. They're both, we presume, going on to slick tyres for the second part of the race.
Bolven, absolute best in Sector 1 on this lap as he's trying to up his game, trying to get away, if he can, a little bit more from Joe Osborne. And in third, Phil Keen's falling further away. The Lamborghini, and Calderelli's is another example of this, not as happy in these conditions. It might be that you need to make a little bit of a tweak to the setup in the pit window as well, while you've got the car in the pits. But on the current evidence, the Lambo's not that happy.
Well, these two are 20 seconds clear of Keane now, so even if Nick Jones and Stuart Proctor, are not quite as quick as Adam Ballon when he jumps into the 72 car, Adam will have quite a job overhauling that sort of a deficit. 69 out just ahead of 2 then, so 2 now being piloted by Michael O'Brien, and immediately goes on the attack to try and get past Sam De Haar going out of Hollywood. Silver graded driver in the McLaren and another silver graded driver, in the Mercedes. So that should be quite an equal battle as the leaders go through for another lap.
Now they'll stay out for as long as possible, of course, because they're on the right tyres and they're the quicker drivers. So in traffic, Scott Mulvin down towards Redgate. Matt Griffin a lap down, even though he's up into a notional 7th place, helped by pit stops. Right, battle is on here as you've got Dan Vaughan crawling all over the back of Jordan Collard. This is for third in GT4, McLaren versus Aston Martin.
Yes, indeed, and these have been locked in combat pretty much since the race started, haven't they then? Daniel Vaughan running around in 5th place in GT4, Jordan Collard just in front of him, defending well. They've got a bit touchy-feely at times, but you can see the way they've dropped the 95 car now, haven't they, of Conor O'Brien, who was every bit as quick as them earlier on. Indeed, he was ahead of these two at one stage. Rain on the windscreen at Coppice. I told you, rain on the windscreen at Coppice. Now, it's not heavy yet, but if the track starts to turn back the other way, well, who knows what might happen.
So those that started on slicks can put wets on at the pit stop and they'll have got it right at both sides, so to speak, assuming that rain continues to come down in any quantity and make life sufficiently bad to necessitate a stop. Scott Mulvin, having done the best lap of the race, is about to lose the lead because Joe Osborne throws everything at it on the outside line, can't do it. The Bentley hangs on in there. Great battle this. Yeah,
Mulvin didn't get a good exit from the chicane. I think he was lapping someone going into the chicane, and Osborne saw his chance to get to the outside, but Scott Mulvin, that Bentley is a pretty big car anyway. It's tough to pass, and Scott Mulvin defended the inside well.
Now, these slicks are going to carry on working for at least a lap or two because they're nice and hot, and there's not that much rain falling. Yes, we've seen a bit of drizzle, perhaps more than rain. So for the moment, slicks are still okay if they've got the temperature in them, and you can see that from the way that the two leaders are absolutely carving their way through the traffic. The road still has a dry line upon it. 58 Jordan Collard letting the traffic go. The GT3 cars get past him down the hill. So for the moment, Mulvin has opened up the gap, but now the team's had a headache in knowing what to do next on the tyre choice.
And the trouble is, I don't think it's raining everywhere because there was no rain on the windscreen going through the crane of curves. I think it's, ironically, the part of the circuit that dried up first is now getting wetter first up here through McLean's and Coppice. So through goes Mulvin, the leader then. Osborne really dropping back at the start of this lap in traffic. And these two are 16 seconds ahead of Phil Keen, so he's taken a second out of them. But, well, actually, I was going to say that's all down to the traffic. Maybe not. Phil Keen just did a personal best on the previous lap just to prove us wrong about the rain.
And in all of this, 7th overall. I know he's not made a pit stop and others have, but Ewan Hankey from the pit lane in a GT4 car, 7th overall. It's a false 7th, but it's an impressive 7th. As here, look, Richard Neary in the race, but effectively a lap down now after his pit stop. We've got Andrea Calderelli behind him. So Andrea's had to find a way past the ABBA Mercedes once, and now with a different driver on a different lap, he's going to do it again.
The trouble for Team ABBA here, and a few of the other Pro-Am teams that were on wets, they've had to pit earlier than they'd like and stick the AM driver in a lot earlier than they would have probably planned to, just because they had to get back out there on the slick tyres. So Richard Neary, who's not been as quick obviously as his son Sam, who is the designated pro in that car, ordinarily would not have jumped into the car until right at the end of the pit window.
Right, to the pit lane goes Jordan Collard then. That enables Dan Vaughan to go through, and that will give him second in GT4, third in GT4, forgive me, as he comes over the timing line. Again, you can tell how gloomy it's getting because the lights are such an effective identificator now as they come across the line. There for slicks is 58, so the teams are still convinced it's the right way to go, despite what we thought we saw on the windscreen a lap or two ago. Yeah,
as you said, though, they can cope with a little bit of rain. It's only really if the track starts developing standing water, that's when the slick tyres simply won't work. And the way that the weather's been today, we haven't had a sudden downpour, have we? So even if it starts to rain a little bit heavier, there's a chance they might be able to manage it. It's going to get gradually damper rather than suddenly filling with water. So I guess the slick is the only sensible way to go. You wouldn't stick wets on now. It's nowhere near wet enough for the wet tyres. And if the rain doesn't come properly, then you're going to look a bit silly out there, again, on the wrong tyres for the second stint.
So that was the first half of the race, and it was done in almost one breath. And now we've got 30 minutes to go, and the race leaders are separated by thousandths. So it was 9/10 at the start of this lap. Bentley versus McLaren, Scott Mulvey versus Joe Osborne. Perhaps two underrated drivers both. Team Parker Racing then ahead of the, there it is, Balfe Motorsport car as they come up towards the line. Balfe winning here at the end of last year, but Scott Mulvey for the local team, Leicestershire team, Team Parker Racing, holds sway and will stay out there for as long as possible.
Yep, 4/10 in it this time, so the gap came down by half a second that time. Personal best for Joe Osborne. In fact, personal bests for an awful lot of cars. I'd say over half the field went green on the previous lap. So yeah, it seems to be pretty stable again with the conditions. Through the Craner curve they go. And this really interesting battle between the Bentley and the McLaren. Two more different GT3 cars you couldn't really hope to find, and that is being demonstrated by the fact that one of them, Bentley in particular, is quick through the high-speed stuff, but through that final sector, Joe Osborne is able to close, and that's realistically where you're going to do all of the overtaking.
97 is in, Dan Vaughan to give way to Jamie Caroline. See the little flame in the brakes there, proof of how hard they have been pushed in the opening stint. They're going to get the wets off, and the slicks on, and that mechanic is about to find a little furnace burning away. Here over the timing line, Jordan Witt versus Richard Neary. Now this is a battle of those that have made a pit stop as Matt Cowley joins in behind from the pits of the GT4 Mustang. Jordan Witt up the inside of Richard Neary. Again, it's a bit of a hit and shoulder as Richard slides out wide. That certainly wasn't Jordan Witt's fault. It wasn't really Richard's fault. It was the power kicking in of the Mercedes on a greasy road. There's not much you can do about that, but Jordan Witt goes through, picks up 7th overall.
Yep, in is Andrea Calderelli then to hand over to Michael Igo. Now, no tyre change, or at least they're not going to go on to wet tyres here. They started on slicks anyway, and they're just finishing the driver change now. So the race 1 winners, remember, 10-second success penalty for winning in GT3 in race 1. It's a 7-second penalty for 69 and 5 for number 6.
Leaders in, so together they were on the track, together they are in the pit lane. For Team Parker Racing, they're at pit in, so straight to the pit box. Midway down is Balfe, and almost at pit out is the AF Corsa Ferrari.
Yes, so this obviously no success penalties, so this should be a pretty equal stop. So in theory, they should go back out of the pit lane as they came in. Phil Keane is in to hand over to Adam Balance. The top 3 cars now in fact the top 6, because Calderelli, Wilkinson and Matt Griffin are also in. So this is the completion essentially of the pit stop window now. All the GT4 cars pretty much have made their way down the pit lane too. Out goes Michael Igo, but more or less a lap adrift of the race leaders by this point. Out also goes the 96 Optimum Motorsport car, started by Ollie Wilkinson, now taken over by Lewis Proctor.
There's an incident between 78 Lamborghini, 96 McLaren under investigation. That's the Collard Mitchell Lambo versus the Wilkinson and Proctor Jr. McLaren, so that's going to be looked at as down the pit road come the GT4 cars.
And Nick Jones as well, who maintains the lead and actually pulls away, I reckon, from Stuart Proctor.
Yeah, there is 21, which is still Ewan Hankey, doing a long stint in the GT4 McLaren before he gives way to Mia Fluitt. Down the pit road goes Adam Ballard now in the Barwell Lamborghini. So everybody's cycling through stops. Duncan Cameron back into the race and we'll have a look at the order at the end of the next time everybody has been over the timing line. A 1 second stop-go penalty for car number 2 for being too short on the pit stop. So number 2, Michael O'Brien, is 1 second stop-go penalty for a short pit stop. The evidence is there from the pit in to pit exit loops. You can't really argue with it. It's given to the race director, and the there it is, RJN McLaren is going to have to serve a stop-go penalty. That takes that effectively out of contention. Nick Jones then leads the way for the moment in the 66 Bentley.
Yes, and already Stuart Proctor, look at how far back he is from the Bentley. Remember, these two cars were nose to tail when they came into the pit lane. That is the 69 car, isn't it, of Sam De Haar, who I reckon is going to be in 3rd place now and could be on course here. He should be, in theory, quicker than the drivers ahead of him. He makes the pass for 2nd place, or will come 2nd place pretty easily there on Stuart Proctor down the back straight. The 69 Mercedes, who had a good result in that first race, remember, finishing 2nd. They're the championship leaders already. If they can pull off a race win here, that is a very successful day of racing for them at Donington. They'll have a healthy cushion going to the next rounds.
Absolutely right. There's the number 97 Aston there, gets up with the Matt Cowley Mustang. Side by side they come past the pits then, so that's for position as well. Jamie Caroline in the Aston, and Matt Cowley standing his ground on the inside line. Is he going to be able to hang on to the place? Can Jamie Caroline go right round the outside? They touch. That spears the Aston over the rumble strip, and he'll get back onto the road, but loses, 4 or 5 lengths as a consequence of all of that. So Matt Cowley, that's his Formula 4 1600 experience coming into play there, is not going to give up the place without a fight.
No, Jamie Caroline, very much championship contender then in that Aston Martin. Out having served this penalty is the Jensen Team Rocket RJN McLaren. Michael O'Brien, dream start to the year with that win at Alton Park, but the dream has rather shattered today at Donington. They've not had a great day at the office, but they'll hit the reset button before they go to Brands Hatch next time out, I'm sure. Only 2 weeks before we're back for the 3rd event of the season. There is your race leader then, Nick Jones in the Team Parker Racing Bentley. Now the gap to it's still Stuart Proctor, so the 69 Mercedes that I thought was taking 2nd place has lost a lap somewhere, has it not? Because Sam De Haar is being registered down in 12th position. It's still Jones from Proctor from Ballon, the top 3. Those 3 covered by 17.3 seconds.
I'm not quite sure where that lap would have gone, although it was a slow-ish first stint from Patrick Kuyler. He was struggling a bit for pace, so at the end of this next lap we'll get a proper order and also start to see representative lap times, because so many of the last laps for the leading drivers were an out lap. They're the McLaren fight, number 10, now Jordan Witt. Behind him is Lewis Proctor, but Jordan Witt, more experienced in this type of car, is through and getting away. He had multiple spins in the first race, so hopefully this will be a more solid run for him as he comes down through the old hairpin. You can see he's gapping the similar car run by Optimum behind him as the 2Cs car went over the timing line. Right, where's the leader? There is Nick Jones. That lap was a 35.9. Behind him in 2nd place should be Stuart Proctor, but he's a long way back there. So the lead gap is already up to 9.5 seconds, and Proctor is lapping 2.1 seconds a lap slower. So in 3rd is going to be there Adam Ballon in the green Lamborghini. He is lapping quicker than is Proctor, but not yet as quickly as Jones, and he's got to make up 9.5 seconds to the 2nd place McLaren. Nick Jones is still looking pretty comfortable, even with 23 minutes to go.
On a day in which I don't think Team Parker Racing, with respect, thought they would win a race, and yet here they are. Now that it's dried out a bit, they've got the pace. The Bentley always has gone well here. He's on the inside of the GT4 Aston Martin. He's nearly in the GT4 Aston Martin as he goes through at Coppice Corner, and the Bentley should pull away again on the back straight then. So yeah, he's 9.5 seconds clear. Michael Igo, by the way, is in 4th place for WPI Motorsport, the race 1 winner, but he's 36 seconds adrift of the overall podium, and being caught slightly by Jordan Witt in 5th, 6th place Lewis Proctor, 7th Richard Neary, and Rob Collard I think will come through in 8th in the 2nd Barwell car.
Yeah, Michael Igo nearly a minute off the lead, so 55 seconds adrift as there. Nick Jones dives up the inside of Matt Cowley. Sam De Haar in the lap Mercedes trying to get back onto the lead lap, because you never know. If a safety car were to come, that would get him back at the races. He has a look to the inside of Nick Jones. Behind all of them, you've got number 9 carving his way back into contention, which was the now Angus Fender, initially Gene McDonald. McLaren with Nick Jones again gets all crossed up. Here you've got a GT3 rookie on greasy track conditions, and with all the pressure of leading the race and possibly scoring his first outright win. I'm I'm not entirely sure I'd like to be Nick Jones at the moment, but he's still hanging on in there, just about.
In the back of the 2Cs Motorsport McLaren, though, which also unlapped itself then into Redgate, but then sort of stopped on the apex, and Mulvey gave it a bit of a headbutt as it went out of the corner, but his elbows Bentley strong. I'm sure there was no real damage done. He is continuing to pull away from Proctor, though, so he can sort of afford to be fairly cautious here with traffic, and if someone really wants to come through and unlap themselves, he's no need to fight them, really. And indeed, he lets those two go in the end. Michael Igo fourth, as we said, Witt in fifth. In GT4, it is Gus Bowers that leads the way now, am I right? Yes, it is. So, no, still Ewan Hankey, who's only just pitted, actually. So Ewan Hankey went right to the end of the pit window. Again, he's the pro driver. Mia Flewitt, the AM, will take over. So once she rejoins the track, we'll find out exactly what the GT4 order is.
Absolutely right. With 23 laps done, Nick Jones leading by 9.5 seconds, still lapping quicker than Stuart Proctor, who is still being caught by Adam Ballon. So that's the other thing that might save Nick Jones in all of this. If a battle does develop for second place, even if he is having to be conservative just to get the car home without errors, that battle might take up attention behind him. I go fourth, it's Jordan Witt in fifth, and it's Lewis Proctor in sixth place, as here the Toyota in the hands of James Kell comes towards us. You've got 21 ready to rejoin, then Mia Flewitt giving away places in the pits. 69, Sam De Haar rumbles up towards the timing line. The Toyota steps up onto the curb there, and the race leader with a big flash of the lights comes through. So Nick Jones, last lap was a 36.9. That is 5.9 seconds slower than Scott Mulville was doing at the height of the lead battle. That car that began on slicks, and that's largely why it got the race lead, and he's now 10 seconds to the good. So even though Nick Jones' pace is not as good as that of Scott Mulville, nor would you expect that, he is lapping quicker than the second place car.
Yes, and the top four at the moment are all pro-AM entrants. They're all AM drivers. You kind of expect the silver cars to come back into contention in the second half of the race, but Jordan Witt in fifth and Lewis Proctor sixth in the two McLarens are, well, they have a chance maybe to get on the podium, or well, probably not fourth place realistically, as good as it will get for them. Because those top three just pulled out such a cushion at the start of the race. Right, there goes 58, that's Patrick Mathiasen now. 57 has been taken over by birthday boy Chris Westmail, and as he heads down into the chicane, 58 example does anyway, running in about third place in GT4. Now I noticed that the Toyota of the 23 car of James Kell has fallen down the order, but here he's behind those two now, so the car that was potentially in contention for the class win earlier may no longer be.
But it did have an extra 5 seconds, whereas the McLarens didn't, so that takes some of the benefit away from that good first stint of Sam Smelt. Here is Sam De Haar coming under attack from the number 9 McLaren of Angus Fender, that's 7 laps down after various dramas early on, including many a lap parked on the grass at the old hairpin. And Sam De Haar rumbles his way up towards the timing line. Number 69 Mercedes still a long way back in 10th place. It's on the lead lap again, but it's got a lot of time to make up in order to challenge any further up the order. Now, it is still Nick Jones leading. He's done 25 laps. He was 10 seconds clear last time. We await the arrival of Stuart Proctor. The cars running that you're looking at, 10th and 21st respectively. The lead gap is up again, 13 seconds. Now there in the background is the green Lamborghini of Adam Ballon, and he is 6.6 seconds behind Stuart Proctor. So second and third is the one to watch now in the overall situation.
Only a tenth quicker though than Stuart that time around. A 38.5 for Proctor, a 38.4 for Ballon. Again, we don't know what traffic, what part traffic had to play in that. There is Ballon though, who came so close to the championship last year. Off the road though, I'm afraid, goes Ian Loggy, and that's a strange place to end up off the road. He's sort of halfway down the exhibition straight on slick tyres. We saw from the 2Cs car earlier on that it's not easy to get off the grass without getting stuck. And the last thing that some teams want here is a safety car. We've got 18 minutes still to go. It's exactly what Sam De Haar wants though, because he fought so hard to get back on the lead lap. He'll have just driven past his teammate down the back straight and thought, oh, that's an awful shame that he's gone off the road, but you know what, it might actually bring me back into this.
Could be his salvation, couldn't it? So Ian Loggy was trying to get momentum to get off the grass. Where is the Mercedes? Didn't see it there, so maybe it has got going again. It was a big, big lose coming out of Coppice, around once, around twice. Real magic roundabout job that, and then Ian Loggy tries to get it off the grass, but there's just no traction. But seemingly, I think he has got back onto the road. We'll check at the end of the next lap, and there is a 65-second stop-go penalty for number 9, Angus Fender, for stopping outside the window. So a 1 minute and 5 second penalty for number 9 McLaren for stopping after the window. Well, the car was 21st and 7 laps down anyway, so there's sort of insult to injury, really, or the other way around. It's all rather academic, but rules is rules. That car's had a pretty torrid day, hasn't it?
Well, they both have, but they've both had moments, haven't they? Both Nine and Tang, where they've been running amongst the leaders and holding their own. They've had the pace. They've just been a bit too accident-prone today. And again, a bit like Alton Park, where they arguably could have won a race and threw it away with a penalty. It is a new team, though, isn't it? And I suppose there are always going to be teething troubles. And hopefully by the end of the season, they'll have ironed them out and they can be real contenders for race wins. 57 up the hill then, that is Chris Westmail, who is running in second place in GT4. So Mia Fluid still has the class lead by the looks of it in the Balf Motorsport McLaren, running in 13th place overall, and the margin over Westmail is 30 seconds.
And he is lapping nearly 6 seconds a lap quicker. So can he get there in the remaining 16 minutes? I'm not sure he can. It's going to be close. But Mia Fluid's pace much slower than Chris Westmail's, or if you prefer, Chris Westmail's pace much quicker than Mia Fluid. The gap will come down. But Mia Fluid in the Balf Motorsport car, I think, will prevail, but it's going to be touch and go. It's going to be close. Half a minute to make up in 16 minutes. It's quite a big ask, especially with traffic around. But of course, in some cases, you've got to get out of the way of, which interrupts your flow as much as you want to do some overtaking yourself. There, look, light to blaze is Adam Ballon, who is third. And on this lap, he was quicker in sector 1 and quicker in sector 2 than was Stuart Proctor.
Yes, he was. 4.6 seconds was the gap at the start of the lap. There is Proctor in the GT3 Balf McLaren. Turns through the final hairpin. He's actually run a decent pace in this second race. I think he'll be a bit happier with his performance than he was in race 1. And even if Adam Ballon gets him here before the end of the race, which is looking increasingly likely, I don't think he's likely to fall off the podium because Michael Igoe is just so far back. So that would be a really welcome result, I think, for that team on their return to competition. That was close, wasn't it, through Redgate Corner? That
was Duncan Cameron going wide and giving away track position, not a place, because that car's a lap down anyway after a difficult day at the office, no matter what the conditions, no matter what the tyres. But Adam Ballon, who gets better and better year on year with all the extra experience and seat time that he gets, tucked up behind Matt Cowley now in the mighty Mustang. 17th overall is the GT4 car. Adam Ballon doesn't want to waste time, but equally doesn't want to put himself in jeopardy. So there wasn't really a Lamborghini-shaped gap there. There is now, and he's got the power coming out of McLean's up towards Coppice. Job done. Down to third, down to second, turn in.
Yeah, that was harder than it should have been, though, against the GT4 car, wasn't it? But he has picked his way through. Of course, the GT4 traffic in their own race too, and they don't want to just leap out of the way. If they jump offline and hit a wet piece of track, they could very easily find themselves visiting the scenery, so they've got to be careful about it. Academy Motorsport, by the way, with the Mustang that they just passed, 5th place in GT4 overall, with Matt Cowley now at the wheel. There is the 23 Toyota of James Kell. So as we said, had that success penalty, they've fallen down to 4th, but are quicker than everybody in front of them. James Kell, the fastest of the GT4 cars right now, the only one in the sub 1 minute 40 bracket, with the exception of Patrick Kibble, who's a bit further down, so they could yet get back into the top 3.
We're talking about Michael Igoe a couple of laps ago and his gap against the top 3. He is taking 4 seconds a lap out of those ahead of him. He is a winner earlier on in the day, don't forget, absolutely flying. Now, as far as the leader is concerned, I don't think Nick Jones is in huge jeopardy, but the pace that Michael Igoe is displaying, and some of this might be traffic related, I'll grant you, is absolutely outstanding. Jordan Witt is lapping a little bit quicker behind him, and Lewis Proctor's laps are slightly quicker too. Michael Igoe, that last lap was in the 34s actually, so only 2 seconds a lap quicker, as I think the traffic gets in the way. All of these gaps are a little bit elasticated because of the back markers, but Michael Igoe has been very impressive all day, and there he is, and he's not finished yet.
No, well, we said after the pit stops they were about a minute off the lead. They're now 37 seconds off the lead, so that shows you just how much progress he's made, and the attitude of the car tells you that he's pushing hard, using all of the curve there out of the old hairpin. He's pulling away. No, he's been caught actually by Jordan Witt, who's going even quicker behind, but Jordan is a silver graded driver. You'd expect him to be quicker, and he's only 1.3 seconds clear of Lewis Proctor, so these three are tightening up whilst also catching Proctor and Ballon ahead of them.
We'll have to hyphenate Michael Igoe's surname to Michael Igoe quickly, because he's certainly illustrating the point that he's a quick driver, winner in the GT Cup now from earlier on in the day, a British GT Championship winner as well. Andrea Calderelli, perhaps it was a slower start as the tyres came to work well on the Lamborghini, but the Italian driver did a good job of getting the car into contention. Now here you've got the fight for 5th. Jordan Witt, who is lapping quicker than Igoe, is being caught by Lewis Proctor. In other words, 4th, 5th, 6th, concertinaing, and net catching the top three anyway.
It's all coming together, as it so often does, into the final 10 minutes or so. The outside line is where Lewis Proctor places the Optimum Motorsport McLaren, the orange car. The blue 2C's example of Jordan Witt in front, car number 10. Their best result so far this year, that 4th place they had in race 2 at Alton Park, but they're in danger of losing the place now at Goddard's. He outbrakes himself, runs out wide, and Lewis Proctor gets alongside. But now, frustratingly, the next corner is a right-hander, and now that the conditions are dry, the outside is not the grippiest part of the road. He's going to have to be super brave on the brakes, which he almost was. They almost made contact, and he bailed out of it, so the number 10 car stays in front, holds on to 5th place.
But there's traffic up the road, so Lewis Proctor now, if he can read the road ahead of him and read the situation, will be working out whether that can be used to his advantage or whether he just needs to be cautious. Jordan Witt will dive up the inside, but that's a bit risky, and they almost lean on each other. Jordan Witt goes a bit deep into the corner. Lewis Proctor easily gets past the back marker and has the momentum, and now he's applying yet more pressure to Jordan Witt as they get up towards McLean's. There isn't a gap on the inside line, hooks a wheel on the curb, but certainly there Lewis Proctor was mindful of what could happen, and it very nearly did.
We have been treated to some top quality racing today, haven't we, in both rounds of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship at Donington Park, and it ain't over yet. This is Adam Ballon. He's on the tail of Stuart Proctor for 2nd place overall. Proctor has hung on valiantly here. Can he hold on for another 11 minutes? It's doubtful, and around goes Michael Igoe right in front of the McLarens. That was so close through the chicane. Michael Igoe from 4th position goes off the road. Through into 4th goes Jordan Witt. Through into 5th goes Lewis Proctor, and off as well goes Richard Neary. Is there fluid down? What's going on down at the chicane?
Well, there's certainly gravel on exit that Michael Igoe has brought onto the circuit. And Richard Neary, I think, possibly got it just wrong under braking, didn't he? He lost the back of the car. Nobody else is having the same problem. But now you've got gravel on the road and the stationary car. Peter Daly, the race director, will be watching all of this, thinking, come on, Richard, fire it up. Can you get going? Sometimes when the cars are hot, you have to sort of wait what seems like an agonisingly long amount of time. But that car is at a really risky point. It's a fast chicane. It's a blind chicane too. You've got the Rexel barrier reducing your view of the first element, and then you've got a car off the road, so keeping an eye to the race control message line. It doesn't matter, because there it is, back in the race, Richard Neary. But that, for those behind, coming across, well, 2 spinning cars really, Igoe and then Neary. That was a massive Code Brown moment, as Ballon now, he's all over the back of Proctor.
Yeah, but Proctor not letting him go here. 10 minutes to go, and Ballon sideways at Coppice. They're all starting to push the limit now, aren't they? The track is still not perfect. Out onto the back straight he goes. He's got more speed. He's in the slipstream. The McLaren is very good down the straight, though. How good is it on the brakes into the chicane? Remember, there's gravel all over the road, and these drivers haven't seen it yet. Ballon's outbraked himself. He runs out too wide. They slide over the gravel, rallycross style through the chicane. Ballon's got no grip out of the corner, and Proctor scoots away.
But can Adam Ballon bring down that gap? The answer should be yes. Look, he's doing some of it under braking for the Melbourne hairpin, closing right up. Proctor's a little bit deep on the exit of the corner. So Adam Ballon then, having had that rallycross style moment on the gravel coming out of the S's, trying to clean the tyres, get back into contention. As Richard Neary had another moment, he certainly lost track position there to the number 2 McLaren. So Richard Neary having a pretty busy time of it in these last few minutes. Over the line, Proctor to Ballon. 0.6 of a second now.
Yes, and where is Jordan Witt in all of this, and Lewis Proctor? Because they weren't that far back, were they? They were catching too, but of course they were delayed by the spinning Richard Neary at the chicane. They're too far back, I think.
In GT4, remember Mia Fluid was half a minute ahead. She's now 10.5 seconds. Chris Westmail's going to do this, isn't he? He's absolutely flying. Mia Fluid is still 4 seconds a lap slower than the HHC McLaren.
Chris Westmail turned 25 today. What a brilliant birthday present that would be. His first ever victory in the British GT Championship. Fight for second is still on, though. Adam Ballon in the Lamborghini. The circuit at which Barwell have had such awful luck in recent years. Can they get a second place finish out of race number 2 here? They missed out on the podium in race number 1 with the 78 car that at one point we thought might win it. 72 though, as off again goes Ian Logie, about 100 metres or so further up the road, and through goes Ballon. A mistake this time from Stuart Proctor at Coppice. Ballon goes through into second place.
GT4 gap, 6.4 seconds then, flew it to Westmail, so it is on, as there is 72 Adam Ballon, the new second place driver, flicks through the chicane. 69 is Sam De Haar, under attack from Michael O'Brien here. This is for position, this is for 8th and 9th, Mercedes versus McLaren. The car's twitching as the drivers apply the power. 8 minutes of the race remaining, down the hill they come. And while all this is going on, still Nick Jones is leading and looking for a maiden victory outright, a maiden victory in GT3. And Richard Neary is off the road again. Anything one green and black Mercedes can do, the other one can do just as well, can't it?
Oh dear. Meanwhile, Lewis Proctor's gone fourth for Optimum ahead of Jordan Witt. He's one of the fastest cars on the track, but nearly 14 seconds behind Ballon, who is second, of course, now, with Stuart Proctor in third, 1.7 seconds back. Can Lewis Proctor catch Stuart Proctor? That's the next question. That'll be an interesting battle, wouldn't it? 8.3 seconds is the gap. I think he can. Lewis Proctor could get the Optimum Motorsport McLaren here onto the podium. They had a podium at Alton Park in race 1 with second place, and they are significantly quicker than the third place car right now.
That was GT4 going through shot just ahead on the road of the De Haar O'Brien battle. So Mia Flewitt, remember, half a minute ahead she was. She's about to lose the class lead. Happy birthday, Chris Westmail up the inside line. Job done. Brilliant effort that. Whatever was in the birthday cake really does give you an extra 10 bhp. So he's done it, he's caught and passed, but from half a minute back, the HHC McLaren now leads the way. And remember that 57 was another of the pit lane starters, as was 21 McLaren, but that's a great job done. Now, in the meantime, Adam Ballon, up into second place, now sets off behind the race leader. Can he do anything about the gap of 22 seconds in 6.5 minutes? I fear not.
The real question here is, can Lewis Proctor overhaul Stuart Proctor for third? Do you know who else is celebrating a birthday today? Lewis Proctor, who could be on for a podium here in the second race. It's a popular day, actually, because Angus Fender is also celebrating his birthday today, although he's had rather less to celebrate.
Yes, I was going to say define celebrate. I know what you mean, though. Right, so for Lewis Proctor to get on the podium, he's got to get past his dad. That'll make for a quiet birthday dinner, won't it? So there is Michael Igoe ahead of Rob Collard, and of course the Collard, like the Nearys, like the Proctors, another of the families involved in the British GT Championship this year, heading now down towards the Melbourne hairpin. This is the position, don't forget, this is for 6th overall with just under 6 minutes to go. We are far from done yet in this race.
These are the cars that are 3rd and 4th in the championship as well. 78 is ahead, but by half a point of WPI Motorsport after their win in the earlier race. Sideways for Michael O'Brien, and he's lost that place now, hasn't he? Michael O'Brien falls behind. In fact, he was behind Sam De Haar anyway.
Yes,
I think he was trying to fight back, wasn't he? As they went out of Coppice Corner, the McLaren coming back on strong as they fought their way through GT4 traffic. There's only 5 minutes of this race left, David. I'm not happy about this. I want more. This has been another incredible round of the championship. The race win overall might be pretty settled, but further back, it's anyone's guess.
It's one of those races where you want to hide the checkered flag, isn't it? Michael O'Brien, remember, had that 1 second stop go. That's why he dropped back behind the Mercedes in the first place. We just had down the pit road Richard Neary, who's probably fed up of rotating and has decided, somewhat nauseous he might feel, that the pit lane is a good place to be. It could also be that car's got a problem, in fairness to Richard, which is why it's been off the road a lot. Now, Michael O'Brien versus Sam De Haar. Absolutely nose to tail, just under 5 minutes to go. This is the fight for 8th place. O'Brien to the outside line down to Redgate. Wide in, tight out would be the plan. Can he get the undercut out? Yes, he can. He's on the power. He's got the inside line, but the grunt of the Mercedes keeps him just ahead. So Sam De Haar bravely jukes it out on the way to Hollywood.
The McLaren better on the brakes, the low-down torque of the Mercedes gets it off the corner better. This is the great thing about GT3 racing, the balance of performance working perfectly. Michael O'Brien, though, running out of grip down into the old heaven. They're both running out of grip as they're absolutely on the limit. This is only for 8th place, but every position is worth fighting for here because points are so crucial. Every year the championship is decided by a couple of points either way. You need to fight for every position you can right down to the end.
It's not just the BOP, of course, that makes GT racing so good. It's the fact that cars are different shapes, they make different sounds as well, different configurations, normally aspirated turbo. There's so much variety on the grid. And now, again, here comes the McLaren to the outside line down towards the S's, but still the Mercedes has its nose in front, and there's a lot of nose on that Mercedes. It's got a long, long bonnet, so it takes you a while to get past it, and De Haar stays ahead.
Oh, and O'Brien sideways through the chicane. Now, Stuart Proctor has fallen behind his son, Lewis Proctor, but neither of them are on the podium. Jordan Witt is on the podium now for 2C's Motorsport number 10. He gained 2 positions that time as the Proctors swapped around. We have to assume he took advantage of it and got himself into 3rd place. He's 7.4 seconds behind Ballon and quicker at the moment. Running out of time, though, 3.25 minutes still to go.
And this is the Jordan Witt we didn't see this morning, because Jordan was in all sorts of strife in the first race, but he's really delivering now. Another of the Cheshire set, Jordan Witt, so near neighbour of Michael Igoe, and he's up into 3rd place as, with lots of arm twirling, Michael O'Brien dances the McLaren out of Goddard's. Sam De Haar just a little bit further ahead, 7/10 of a second. Of all the people to carry an onboard in this race, Michael O'Brien has been a really good pick, hasn't he? This is great vision coming out of Redgate. Whoa, up the curb, more twitchiness, just about under control. 2 3/4 minutes to go.
Third and fourth come through the chicane, then Jordan Witt getting away from Lewis Proctor. Rob Collard, by the way, just got past Michael Igoe for 6th. 2 Lamborghinis swapping places. The Barwell car ahead of the WPI car. Remember, I said those two just half a point apart, easy for me to say, for third in the championship. Now, that was a mistake there for Jordan Witt. Went way too deep on the ropes into the Melbourne hairpin, and Lewis Proctor might just have another chance at getting that birthday podium that he so desires. He's got, I think, similar pace to Jordan Witt. Like I said, we didn't see what happened, but I'm guessing that as the Proctors swapped, Witt was able to take advantage of their loss of momentum, because now it looks as though Lewis Proctor has the pace to stay with the 2Cs Motorsport McLaren.
Meantime, Nick Jones still leads by 16.9 seconds. The gap has certainly come down over the last couple of laps, but he's going to be good, barring a mistake, to hang on in there. Great drive this by Nick Jones. He's pretty inexperienced at this level. Massive pressure on him to back up what Scott Malvern did in the first stint in a car that doesn't necessarily like the wet. Now, OK, we're in damp, greasy rather than wet conditions, but this has been the stint of Nick Jones' life. He deserves great credit for it. He's not been racing for that many years, and for Stuart Parker, who's having a great season with a competitive touring car, with being almost dominant in Carrera Cup GB, and now some good results in the British GT Championship. There'll be much to celebrate. There'll be one more lap to wring out of this for Nick Jones, and it'll be the longest lap of his life, trying to tiptoe round. He'll be hearing funny noises, but he will get it to the end, I'm sure. As, meantime, Sam De Haar still fends off the really towy Michael O'Brien. Let's see what the McLaren's looking like as it comes out of Redgate. Nervous, twitchy is the answer, and again he's going to have a look up the inside. Oh no, you don't, says Sam De Haar. Elbows out and he fends him off.
Yep, down through the Craner curves they come then, getting towards the end of this enthralling fourth round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Sam De Haar in the Mercedes for Ram Racing, trying to salvage something from them in this race after the Ian Logie car has pulled into the pit lane and dropped down the order. Richard nearing the pit lane, Ian Logie with a spin, wasn't it, earlier on? 69, though, have picked their way through after a slightly slow start to the race, as Nick Jones, by the way, has just gone through onto that final lap. There he is, going through Redgate Corner. An inspired decision to start this car on slicks, and then a great performance by Malvern to do better than everyone else that was on slick tyres and build the gap in the first part of the race.
Stuart Parker there can barely watch, just walking out of shot as he looks on. So great enthusiast, Stuart Parker, former racer himself, going back to Formula Vauxhall Junior days, and then he decided to go to team management and has done a great job. But on board with Michael O'Brien in the Bob Neville run McLaren, staring at the back of the Ram Racing Mercedes of Sam De Haar. This is going to go down to the wire as well, isn't it? So Nick Jones then on his last lap. The clock has hit 0, but all these squabbles continue to the flag. That McLaren looks so twitchy, so nervous, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really is struggling to get the power down, and I think had it not been for that, he probably would have been through. He gets close and then immediately starts to struggle. Now, is it raining? Is it raining at Coppice? Because Nick Jones had no grip then in the slick shot Bentley going through the top right-hander. He only has to bring it over the line. He's 16 seconds clear of Adam Ballard, but look how slow he's going through the chicane.
I think he's just being ultra cautious, isn't he? He is
maybe
on target for the biggest win of his life. And like I said, this is going to be the longest lap of his career. I think this is just Nick Jones being ultra cautious and not braking too late, not putting the power down too early, and that's why he looks slow. The track conditions might be changing, but he's only got a corner to go. He was 16 seconds ahead at the start of the lap. He's going to be good for a win.
Yeah, into the final corner then. Team Parker Racing, who had a challenging 2019, are going to get back onto the top step of the podium. Nick Jones and Scott Malvern win round number 4 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Another thriller here from Donington Park, and what a victory that will be. Second place should go the way of Adam Ballon. This is for third place, Jordan Witt and Lewis Proctor. I don't think Lewis Proctor can get there. They almost caught Ballon by the end, but it will be the Barwell Lamborghini that comes home in second place. Jordan Witt and 2Cs Motorsport back on the podium again, despite a troubled day up until this point. And fourth place for Lewis Proctor, not quite the birthday podium. His father Stuart, though, well, will he come home in fifth? Because that man there, Rob Collard, was only 5 seconds behind at the start of the lap. He's just going to hang on, though. So through will go Stuart Proctor in fifth. Rob Collard in 6th. A solid day for the 78 car that hasn't, I would say, delivered the results that maybe they deserved. 7th place should go to WPI Motorsport, the race 1 winners, and then the 69 Ram Racing Mercedes, if it keeps Michael O'Brien behind to the flag, will hold on to 8th position. In GT4, by the way, it is the win or will be the win anyway. Everyone else in GT4 a lap behind. They've actually taken the checkered flag already, but Chris Westmail in the number 57 HHC McLaren that he shares with Gus Bowers. Bowers did a good stint on slick tyres at the start of the race, and Westmail took over, worked his way onto the tail of and then ahead of Mia Fluid's Balf Motorsport McLaren to take the race lead. And HHC are going to take a race victory here in round number 4 of the championship in GT4. Across the start-finish line they go, and HHC Motorsport take their first victory of 2020.
And a 1-3, because 58 will be third in class. So you've got, well, third in GT4. So Chris Westmail, Gus Bowers the winner, Maya Fluid and Ewan Hankey second, Jordan Collard, Patrick Mathieson third, and then the James Kell and Sam Smelt Toyota fourth, Jamie Caroline, Dan Vaughan fifth in GT4, the Ford Mustang of Matt Cowley and Jordan Albert sixth in GT4. Why couldn't we have had another 2-hour race? I mean, that was just outstanding, wasn't it? I know the conditions helped, and they always do. Mixed conditions where it's wet, dry, wet, things like that will always make a race because you've got the extra strategy involved. But we, and I agree with you, Andy, we have been treated to some outstanding GT racing today. And although we've had an occasional car off the road, we've not really seen anybody with big damage, whether it's bodywork after an accident or mechanically related dramas. It's been a good advert for the teams in British GT.
Yes, it has. Here is the result then of round number 4 of the championship. Scott Malvern and Nick Jones, a popular win for Team Parker Racing's Bentley. It's a car that's popular with the spectators, and plenty of them here to watch the action at Donington Park. Phil Keane and Adam Ballon get a podium at Donington Park. Not something that we've been able to say all that often in the past for Barwell, with Jordan Witt and Jack Mitchell third. 3 different teams on the podium, 3 different cars as well, Bentley, Lamborghini and McLaren. It's another pair of McLarens behind though, Ollie Wilkinson and Lewis Proctor for Optimum Motorsport are 4, with Stuart Proctor and Joe Osborne, one of the stars of the show as well in the first stint was Joe, 5th place for them. Sandy Mitchell and Rob Collard are 6th for Barwell. Andrea Calderelli and Michael Igo 7th for WPI Motorsport, a solid day after their win earlier on, with Patrick Kuyala and Sam De Haar hanging on to that 8th place just about by 0.3 of a second over Michael O'Brien and James Baldwin's McLaren in 9th. Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin had a pretty anonymous race in fairness to 10th. Ian Logie was not anonymous though. He had a couple of spins out on track, with Yelmer Berman having done a solid first stint on the wrong tyre, in the wet tyre on the dry track. Then we get our GT4 winners, Gus Bowers and Chris Westmail. That will mean the world to the drivers and to the team as well after a bit of a dry spell as far as wins are concerned at the start of the season. Ewan Hankey and Mia Fluid though, a win last time at Alton, 2nd place here at Donington Park. They are a bit of a dark horse, I'd say, for the GT4 Championship for Balf Motorsport. Patrick Mathieson and Jordan Collard, as David said, make it 2 HHC McLarens on the GT4 podium, while Sam Smelt and James Kell, it's not quite a repeat podium for the Toyota, but another good 4th place finish for Speedworks. Dan Vaughan and Jamie Caroline for TF Sport are 5th in GT4. Matt Cowley and Jordan Albert's Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang just outside the top 5, ahead of the Century Motorsport BMW, the Aston Martin, the 2nd TF Sport Aston Martin of Kibble and O'Brien, then the Century BMW of Gordon Colebrook and Ben Hurst, with Sam Neary and Richard Neary into the pit lane to retirement towards the end, and of course Dean McDonald and Angus Fender 7 laps down after their early dramas. Well, what a day it's been. I mean, Alton Park 2 weeks ago, it was quite a cagey start to the year. I think everyone was quite glad to be back racing, but not wanting to throw it all away in the first couple of races. A tough place to overtake as well. But here at Donington, we've been treated to 2 of the best, and I think a real feel-good day, really, as far as the racing's concerned. The results that we've seen as well have been popular results in both races, and that Bentley Continental still capable, clearly, of winning in the right hands, and the work they've done on that car to get it to this point, I think is worth the congratulations.
And isn't it great to see somebody like Nick Jones that came into this as a real amateur, learnt in GT4, made the odd mistake, got better. Scott Malvern has helped hugely in bringing him on as a driver, and okay, a GT3 car with all the aero, the extra speed is a different animal altogether, but there's a guy as a businessman racer, an AM racer, who's come into GT racing. He's got better and better and better, felt that he's able to make that progression to GT3, and very early on able to take a race win. That is another good advert for the championship, and it proves that you are able to come into this no matter what your experience, and with the right co-driver, learn and move forward and become an outright winner.
Yeah, it's a championship that's been built on this Pro-Am format, hasn't it? And if you've got a good pro and you've got a team that can not only give you a good car, but guide you on your way. One of the conversations me and Joe usually have up in the box is the relationship between the pro and the Am driver. And a good Am can become a great Am with the guidance of a great pro. And Scott Malvern, although he is relatively inexperienced in GT terms, is a really good pro driver. And he and Nick Jones clearly gelling well. They're really enjoying their racing as well. Despite the fact Alton Park didn't go to plan, they said they took lots of positives out of those first 2 races. They learnt a lot as they get to grips with the car, and here they are on the top step of the podium in round 4.
Yeah, I mean, that point about the Am, it's always something that Johnny Adam will talk about, that you can get so much out of an Am. You know, the pros all run at pretty much the same pace because they're the pros. So there's not much to choose between them. But over the course of a season, you might be able to get 5 seconds at certain venues out of an Am by confidence, by tutelage, and there's so much more in them. And you've seen that. Nick Jones is the latest example. So a great job done. Right, let's go and hear from some of the drivers with Calvin Fletcher.
One more time. No, but I'll just get the interview. I'll bring him in. For sure. He's coming, Nick.
Nick, you did it.
I know.
You did it. That was...
Yes! You do that.
Well, guys, I can see what this means to you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you started this weekend not too optimistic. The weather, you said yourself, wasn't the strongest for the Bentley.
Yeah.
Obviously, you took a bit of a gamble, as you said yourself. You threw the dice with a tyre selection.
I didn't make it through the dice. He threw the dice.
Well, it paid off.
Yeah, of course. And Scott did a mega stint, and you can't fault that. And I need to work out what all the buttons do on the steering wheel, because they were telling me to do the TC and I was doing the ABS. So I learned in the end, because they kept on saying the same thing. So no, it was a mega race. I don't know what it was like, but I don't know what my pace was like, but it was pretty slippery out there. So,
Nick, I think you did really well from us watching in. Just to keep it on the black stuff looked like a huge challenge.
Yeah.
I thought you did an exceptional drive.
Thanks, Kelvin.
You must be so proud of yourself, and every right to.
Yeah, no,
Scott,
that's sunk in, but yeah, no, I'm really, really pleased. Well done for me.
Scott, how was that for you? You must have been on 10 sucks watching those last few minutes.
Yeah, it was agony, I got to tell you. But I know Nick. He's fully in control most of the time. I know he would want to do it for the team. So, I'm sure he was in control. It was, loads of people. It was obviously tricky out there because a lot of people were going off. But he brought it home. Pace was very good. Actually built a lead rather than, didn't drop into the clutches. We kept building. And he just brought it home. Mega job, absolutely mega job.
Well deserved, guys. Great to see the Bentley up there. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, as I said, a popular win, and you can see what it meant to them, that raw emotion from the drivers. And some fascinating insight there from Nick Jones. I mean, as I say, this is a new car to them. They don't really know how it works setup-wise, and in Nick Jones' case, doesn't really know how it works internally as well. But he pedalled it quickly to the race victory, and look at it, not a scratch on it. What a well-presented car it is too.
Just thinking, that's 4 races in now, and he still doesn't know what the buttons do, so he needs the manual of Stuart Parker. Right, more drivers, more questions, more Kelvin.
I'm here with the winners of GT4. Like the guys who won GT3, took a gamble with the slicks. Obviously, it paid off.
Yeah, so went out on the outlap and I rated in. I thought, you know what, I think this could be slicks. Did it. First few laps were horrible, but after that, he came into the tyres, circuit was dry, and off we went. So it was great.
It was great to see, because early on, obviously, the car it seemed to be nowhere, and he just climbed up. And then towards the end of the race, you were just there, and I think it was Mia who was leading, actually, and she was like 30-something seconds ahead of you.
Yeah.
And you just saw the time you was taking out, and obviously to finish it in the style you did, in the fashion you did, I thought was absolutely exceptional. You must have been so pumped.
Oh, I was loving it out there. The team took the gamble, put new slicks on as well in the stop. It was just full charge mode from there, really, and see what we could do, and it's great fun. Charging the car down, seeing it on exits, it was great fun out there.
Well done, guys.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, great result then for them. And shout out to Balf Motorsport as well. The only Pro-Am entry in GT4 this weekend. Samir Flirt was always going to have her work cut out in the second stint. And in the end, they come home in second. Well, what a race it was. Round number 4 of the championship started with a bang, with half the grid on slicks, some of the cars on wet tyres. And in the first few laps, the wets were the way to go. But the front row were slick shod. It was the Scott Mulvern driven Bentley that led through turn number 1, but very quickly those on wet tyres started to make their presence felt at the front of the field. In GT4, the decision was a bit more straightforward. All of those cars starting on wet tyres. The Bentley started to slip backwards. Sandy Mitchell coming through on the inside as the Bentley struggled to get heat into the tyres. In GT4, the two TF Sport Aston Martins spent most of the first part of the race together. There was a spin, though, I'm afraid, for the number 9 2Cs Motorsport McLaren of Dean McDonald coming out of the old hairpin. About 10 minutes into the race, though, the track started to turn. The far end of the circuit was dry, and the Bentley of Scott Mulvern was able to get back through into the lead of the race, and it wasn't long before Joe Osborne in the McLaren followed him through into second position. Michael Igoe Andrea Calderelli, was also on slick tyres in the first stint of the race, and he eventually made progress into the top 5. Toyota had the race lead in GT4 early on, but HHC's McLarens were coming into the pit lane for slick tyres as early as possible. Came the wet shod GT3 runners as Joe Osborne had one last ditch effort to get the lead away from the Bentley before the pit stop window opened. Close call there for the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, dicing away with the 2Cs car as the top two came in right at the end of the pit stop window. The Bentley ahead of the McLaren, with Nick Jones jumping into the Team Parker car in the race lead. Ian Logie had a bit of an afternoon to forget with a very, very spectacular spin going down the back straight, whilst McLarens were at play in GT3, the Optimum Motorsport car carving its way through the order in the hands of Lewis Proctor towards the end of the race. Michael Igoe spun away a 4th place finish at the chicane, and he was very quickly followed by Richard Neary, who for a horrifying 30 seconds or so was stalled in the middle of the road. Thankfully no safety car was needed, and Michael Igoe had a second moment at the chicane only a few laps later. Nick Jones was on absolute tenterhooks at the end of the race as he tried to bring the Bentley home, and he did. Team Parker Racing took the first win of the year, the 4th different winner of the year in the GT3 category for Nick Jones and Scott Mulvern. Whilst in GT4, a late change for the lead saw the 57 car for HHC Motorsport, Gus Bowers and Chris Westmail come through to take their first victory in the category. We've had 3 different winners from 4 races in GT4. Thank you for joining us here at Donington Park. We've been treated to 2 fantastic races. We'll see you again next time.